and welcome to another episode of Rihanna Roach Radio and Share Your Story. Today I have Sean from Adelaide, so very close to to me. So thank you for joining me, Sean, and for volunteering your time today to share your story. I'll hand it over to you.
Hi, thank you. My story, well, I'd probably start from a young age because I was brought up in a family of three ladies, like my mum and two sisters, and we really didn't have any other male role model. So I became a very feminine male, so to speak. Even though I played footy and I did all that, my emotions were along with their emotions. So I just followed suit because that's the only thing I knew. And it
Sean, when you say feminine male, can I ask what you mean by feminine male? Because it might just help other men understand, you know, where they're at or where they've been.
Oh, yeah, okay. So my emotions, how I dealt with them, how I didn't have that sort of stoic, strong male role model. My emotions came out in crying at everything, and you know, I don't say how my sisters reacted to things is how I reacted to things.
Beautiful.
So, and it took me a long time. I even, were ridiculed at school for things like that. So that then I built up this wall that I wasn't ever going to show emotion. So I went from showing all this emotion to not showing emotion, and it's taken forever to break that wall down. And I still don't think I've knocked it all down because I still believe me as a male to show an emotion is very difficult.
Okay.
Even now, even though I think I've done a fair bit of work personally on myself, just there's just some aspects that I don't want to break through yet, but I hope I will.
Yep.
So
that's okay.
That's
You're
what
aware
I mean
of them.
there.
So yeah, no, beautiful. Thank you for explaining that.
No,
sorry,
okay.
you can keep going. So you were in a female-dominated house, which I think is very common for a lot of men, at the moment.
Yeah, at the moment, yes, but at the time, having a single mother was very rare back in the 70s.
Okay.
Because it was only then that this whole, the movement of breaking family tradition down started. So we were probably out of all my mates, I was the only one with a single mum, which was quite different.
Yes.
Going to footy on my own or going to footy with mates, fathers, but no one from my family went. So I did my whole sporting career without any support from, a father or my mother or anything. So I know the dynamic's quite different, where now my son, I've got a 14-year-old, and I'm at everything. I do everything with him because that's how I see things should be. And I don't want him to miss out on the opportunity to share things with me, or for me to miss out actually to share things with him.
Yeah, beautiful.
So, and then I went into the meat industry as a young fellow butcher. So I went from this feminine household into this so masculine in the 80s that I went into it. It was really bizarre, the things that happened in butcher shops and so forth, and it was so eye-opening for me. It blew me away.
So would you say and I mean, I know you've told me, but just on here, would you say that industry gave you a good example of the masculine, or was it a non-healthy sort of, or
No, it was, well, for me, it wasn't very healthy.
Okay.
Because it showed me every degenerative thing that happens in society. I was seeing that in the industry. I'm not talking about what it's like now because it's completely cleaned up, but back in those days, it was pretty poor. For a young fella to come through. And what happened to me and happened to apprentices and all that sort of stuff was pretty ordinary. But it instilled a toughness in me that I talked about, because I had to become that toughness. But the problem is that stayed with me through all my relationships. So when I became married, or long-term relationships, I became this hard person that didn't show emotion, but also had a neediness about me.
Okay.
That nice guy routine sort of thing that
so
came in.
That's like your neediness, or that nice guy is from your feminine upbringing, that's you. And then you created this shell around you, the masculine hardness, not healthy masculine, but the healthy or the masculine hardness of not showing any emotion, the coldness, if you like, that I sort of have spoken about maybe a few times. But I think a lot of men have done that in the past, you know, have this soft sort of inside, which is, you know, and then create this hardness because they think that's who they have to be. And so how did that, you know, in your relationships, how did that play out for you?
Oh, it was terrible. My first marriage, there was really no connection, even though we stuck together through for the children we had together, and plus she had a child from a previous marriage. But I noticed that I worked and I worked and I worked to provide, but that's all I provided. I didn't provide any comfort. I didn't, you know, that even though I'm a really affectionate person, I never provided that. And even for my eldest son, and which I'm estranged with at the moment, we haven't talked for years. I know I missed showing him how to be a man. I missed showing him the love that I had for him. And now we're at a point where I don't know what to do and how to repair that. But through that, with my youngest boy, I'm really striving to be the best dad, the best man that he can see, and to be able to take from what I do as a guide for him for moving forward.
Beautiful.
So even his marriage to his mother, I was still that neediness about me, that wanting to do whatever I could. That nice guy, like No More Mr. Nice Guy, is a really good book and process to go through, because it showed me how I was, because it was like reading my story. So when I was in the second marriage as well, I thought that we would be fine. I would just do anything. I would fix everything. And I was emotionally detached still. And she needed me to be that man that just had boundaries, that did all these things. Now I see it, but at the time I had no idea how to perform that role or to sit in that space, because I'd learnt only one way. So to drag myself from there to now say I am two different people.
And Sean, can I ask, so you were showing up obviously in these relationships, from what I'm understanding, you know, you said emotionally detached, but also, correct me if I'm wrong, but like appeasing to what your wife wanted, sort of. And honestly, this is something I've worked with, you know, numerous men now, and it's very common because from what I understand, again, correct me if I'm wrong, like a lot of men, most men want to, you know, make their woman happy. And they think to do that, they need to appease everything that she wants. And so because you were doing that, how was, you know, and we're not blaming anyone here, but how was, you know, your wife showing up in the relationship? You know, was she, you know, because you weren't showing up as a masculine man as such, how was she showing up in the relationship? Because there's always two sides, right? If you're showing up more feminine and more emotionally detached, how was she showing up?
Oh, she was showing up as the masculine. Like she was the dominant person. She was the decision maker. All I was doing was working. So she was a decision maker. She was in charge of the money. She was all these things, and I just, that's fine, do that. You know, it's even, and it used to frustrate me when she'd say, "What do you feel like? What do you want to do this weekend? Oh, what would you like to do?" And that's that straight away, that question of a question
so
became
for a woman.
Frustration. And now I don't even, and I'm not in a relationship now, but even just talking with friends and that, I am decisive. I make decisions.
Beautiful.
And even with my son now, it's this thing that I've had to learn, and I have, and but you still got to,
it takes
works
time.
out when you're,
and decisiveness is definitely a trait of the masculine. And, you know, women, you know, we have masculine energy and traits within us as well. So we can have decisiveness, but to have that polarity in your relationship, a man does need to have some decisiveness, and you're showing us what it looks like when there is no decisiveness from the man. The woman has to take lead, and eventually she loses respect, and there's
Absolutely.
no polarity, there's no sexual chemistry usually after not long. It just starts to dwindle from there. So thank you for sharing that. And I think what a lot of men I've worked with, learn from this is that boundaries are really important in a relationship. Not just appeasing to everything that the other person wants. It's having your own personal boundaries and being able to, say yes, say no. And it doesn't mean that she's not going to love you if you say no. It just means that you've got some personal boundaries and things like that as well. So,
yeah, totally agree. And the great part about moving to where I am sort of now is I've become the observer of my thoughts. So I still think that way.
Yep.
But it's the way I act on those thoughts now, where I sit and I go to a place where I sit there and think, now that's not where I want to be, right? That's And so I'm able to observe the thoughts, observe that feeling, move it on, and then be able to make decisions.
That's so powerful. Yeah.
It is. I've never been able to do it. So the last couple of years I've done a lot of self-work.
Yeah.
Because I've had to.
Yeah.
And the main thing I've gotten out of it is to be the witness. You have to be the witness of yourself.
Yeah.
And so observing thoughts, observing feelings of it, it actually goes into now observing my body. I observe nearly every aspect, my spirituality, so to speak, and bringing those all into context. So
I love that. And that's the only way you can grow and create change. And for me, when I work with clients, that comes down to self-responsibility as well. You're observing the way you're thinking, behaving, patterns that are playing out. And you can choose to stay there and identify and continue to play out those thoughts and patterns and just be that person. Or you can consciously choose to create change. And, that's where you're at. You're choosing to create change and to show up differently because you want to.
Yeah. And also I've learned not to be so hard on myself, because at times when I've done things and I've really remonstrated with myself on why I did that, even though I did it. Now I sort of give myself a bit of a hug and say, mate, come on.
It's okay.
It's okay, right? You stuffed up. Let's move on. Don't hang in that worry thought process. And that's been a real relief for me.
Yeah, that's so good. I do the same thing. And sometimes I'll just sort of let it sort of mull over in my head for a while. I'm like, why am I doing this? Or why am I thinking about this? And, I don't hold on to it for too long. For me, sometimes I just journal it and then leave it and let it be. But I think owning it is really important because we're human.
Absolutely.
We're not going to be perfect. And the more you can own all of you, whether you think it's good, bad, ugly, whatever, the more real, the more authentic, the more human you are. So
and it's all been a process to get to from one place to another, because you could sit in one space, I feel, or I could have, and not changed and just gone on with my life and let it be. But I knew there was something more I had to do. Plus, like I talked about my son, I have to be a role model, because he doesn't have a role model.
Okay.
And I'm in.
Yeah.
And I have to be the best form of a role model for him now. So I've done men's work last year. I did it for all the year, and it was really it opened my eyes up on where I was at and what I needed to work on. I've stepped away from it now because it's not where I want to be at this present time. And I've gone on to a body transformation this year. I've dropped 35 kilos. I go to the gym every day. I've become quite disciplined. Which I've lacked. That's one thing I lacked early on. For most of my life is discipline, where I would just opt out.
And that's the trait of a masculine as well, is discipline and structure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I do that. I've changed my diet. Everything like that has happened, and my body and my son is another one again is proud of how I've gone. I'm proud of how I've gone.
Good. Yep.
And we talk now about sets in the gym and
Yep.
how many I'm doing, what weights, and he talks about what he's doing. And so it's just another form of connection that we've got from it.
That's so good.
Yeah, but now it's like it's the last part is for me is a career, because I've worked in the meat industry for a long time, and then I went up into management and upper management, and then COVID hit and they let me go.
Yep.
And because I just stuck with what was true for me.
Yep.
And what God says to me to do, so I've done that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've now realised that I can't work for anyone, so I'm having to work through a career for myself, but also for my boys and how that's going to play out down the track.
Yeah.
So
beautiful. And there's always pieces to the puzzle, and I love that you're showing the evolution of your growth, and it's really important, I think, that when we sort of start on this journey of self-discovery and growth, is that we don't just stop and get stagnant and say, oh, that's it, I'm done. And look, it might get easier, it might change what you're working on or something, but there's always, you can always keep striving to be the best man or the best person that you want to be. And you're showing the evolution, men's work, you're showing the mindset work, you're showing the body work, and now you're looking at career and purpose and things like that, and no doubt money and things like that. So there's so many layers to living your truth, I believe, and you're showing that you're working through it, not just for you, but to be a role model for your boys as well. So that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Sean. Is there anything else that knowing that there may be men and women listening, but is there anything else that you want to share, any insights, any wisdom, anything else about your journey, your story that you'd like to share?
Well, I guess it is all about because I have now a real focus on what I believe a masculine man should be. Which is probably completely different to another man's version and a woman's version or whatever, and that's fine. But I stick true to that. I stick in all aspects. Like, I don't muck around with people and their emotions, or women. I don't do that. I know that if God puts a partner in my lane, then that will be it. But I don't want to go down that road because that to me is not where a true masculine sits. I think a true masculine wants to get his partner in, and we'll do it that way, not just whoever is around for that.
So do you mean like the right woman? You're waiting for the right woman. Okay.
Absolutely.
So it's not just any woman. And I think that's important to note as well, as like, for women as well, it's not just any man, it's, it's your person. Like when the time is right, I believe as well. And when you're doing the work on yourself, the right person will come into your path, whether it be from God or whatever other people believe.
Absolutely.
Your person will appear. So yes, I think
I'm just keep bettering myself. And look, I slip back, and don't get me wrong, and this is one thing I think is the biggest thing out of it is you can take steps back, or you can falter, but it doesn't matter. You just, like Dave Goggins says, you just get up and you go again, and you just go again, and you just keep going. It's not like you got to fold back and then get in the fetal position. Can't believe I just did all that. You get back up, you get on the horse, and you keep going.
Yes, I think so. And that's just accepting, again, that you're human. Like, we're all going to go backwards whatever backwards is, sideways, backwards, wherever. We're all going to go in different directions. But what I also want to just pick up on what you just said is that, you've got this now view of what a masculine man, your version of a masculine man should look like, and you're striving towards that. And I think that's really important, because, I actually put it out on TikTok, I think, not that long ago, asking men what do they believe, masculinity is, and every person has their own view of what masculinity is, and that's great, but it's having something that you're striving towards, and it's going to look different for every man, but knowing that there are specific traits within the masculine that, you know, are essentially tied to the masculine. So, you know, decisiveness and you know, things like that, leadership, you know, they come from the masculine. It's not saying that women can't do that, but it's essentially tied to the masculine, and most men are naturally more masculine than women. So when you build upon these traits, you can become, you know, the truest version of who you are. I think, you know, that's really important, and noting that it's going to look different in each man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And in the past, I've shared a specific type of man, the awakened masculine man I used to talk about.
Yeah. I remember that.
Which clearly triggered a lot of people.
I don't know why.
It was just one type of man, you know, one archetype of a man that you can strive towards if you want to. You don't have to. But yeah, you've picked your version and you're working towards it, and it's just bettering yourself to become that. And you know, women can do the same thing.
Yeah, I just think authenticity is lacking throughout society.
Yes.
And I just am a big believer of being as authentic as I can.
Yep.
I've worn masks my whole life, and I believe I've stripped them down to, I don't know if I'm wearing one now. I don't feel like I am. I feel like I'm really in this space here.
Good.
The conversations I have with my son are from this space. This is how a man is, mate. And
Good.
I couldn't have had these conversations with him 10 years ago if he was 14 then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have known what I was talking about.
Yeah.
I would have been going off with the fairies or however I was seeing things at the time. So it's being able to be in your truth. This is for me. This is me and my truth. As honest as I am, and doing whatever I can to become the better version of myself with him, and even with society. But I don't become that. That needy person has gone most days.
And that neediness, you know, honestly, that neediness, I work with men and women, and a lot of men and women have that inner neediness, whether you call it that or something else. But that's essentially, you know, I don't know if you've heard of this before, but the inner child is just crying out for, you know, maybe what you lacked through childhood or somewhere else. And all we can do is just acknowledge it's there and just keep, you know, giving it to ourselves, whatever we feel is lacking within ourselves. And when we can give it to ourselves, eventually then we attract, you know, the person that's meant to be our person, because we feel whole and complete. We're able to give everything we need to ourselves. We come as a whole human being, and then the other person comes along as a whole human being as well. And I think what happens in society a lot of the time is that lack or that neediness that we feel is that we then, if we don't tend to that, we attract a person that we think is going to feel that need, and they can't feel something that we're lacking within ourselves. So sorry, I just went on off on a
no, that's fine. No,
tangent.
And I guess one thing that I've found over the last couple of years is that I love myself more than I ever have.
Yeah, good.
And it's not saying that from a neediness perspective. No. It's an actual honest, wow, I'm impressed with me. I'm impressed with where I've come.
Yep.
And that is been a game changer for me.
Yeah.
In life. Like I live a very simple life now as well. Material things don't mean too much to me. I just want to live, support my boy and whatever.
Yep.
And then whatever happens in the future, it'll just be. So I don't need all these other things. I don't even know why I went there, but
that's okay. But I honestly, that is a part of the journey for most people. It's like, what is all this stuff? You know, I still like stuff, but I don't need it anymore. Whereas before, when something was lacking in me, this is just my journey.
That's exactly
I would be buying shit because I'm like, well, that's going to make me feel better, or this car's going to make me feel good, or I don't need that shit anymore. I like some of it, but it's like, I don't need it. You know, I can make do without. So that it is a part of the journey for most people.
And one thing I've noticed this year is my ex-wife, who have kept me out of my son's life as much as she could, and I'm not disrespecting her. It's what
Yeah,
she
that's
did.
okay. Yep.
Where now she's asking me for help
Mm,
and advice and all this on my boy, because he's come at an age where he needs his father,
yeah.
and he needs his father to be in this space like
Yeah.
this, not the father that she married, so to speak,
Mm,
back in the day. And I find that our relationship has improved out of sight.
yeah.
Not that
Beautiful.
I want to have anything to do with her
No, no.
apart from my son, but we have conversations now. We can stand and talk to each other.
Yep.
We can phone, we message, and it's all about
Yeah, of course.
our
Yep.
boy. But there's a respect there from her to
Yeah.
me that was never there before.
She can lean on you now. She can feel that.
Yeah,
You know.
and yeah, that's it. And because when I talk now, I'm just talking about, this is it.
Yeah.
This is what we're talking about. Let's get it. So I'm also grateful that she's asked me to come in to her space to sort things out with
Mm,
our son,
yep.
and so it's been a real win-win with that,
Good.
and that is, I'm really grateful for that to happen,
Yeah,
because
that's
that's what
beautiful.
I've sort of been longing for, that for quite some time.
Yeah. Nice. And you know, that is, you know, a lot of people who have separated don't have that. And I think, you know, doing the work on yourself, you know, pays off in that, you know, your ex-partner now can lean on you for support with your son. So that's really beautiful. And I believe, you know, boys do need their fathers, but they need their father to show up, you know, as you said, you know, as the role model, not just the provider of financial, you know, stuff
Yeah.
and money. You need to be there to guide them and to show the way. And the only way you can do that is by doing that yourself, and you're doing that. So, you know, that's amazing.
We have quite um, not difficult conversations, but really serious conversations, my son and I,
Mm,
about his life, about what he's doing, because he's that 14-year-old kid, and I was that 14-year-old boy, you
yep.
know. And I talk to him in life experiences
Yep.
about, which is what we need to do as fathers. We need to, because this is all we got. I can't talk about a thing out of a book, because I've not experienced that.
Mm,
So I only talk to him about life experiences, so that he understands, you know, actions, repercussions, all things like that. But I also said to him that about with him and his mother and I, because I don't put her down, got no reason to.
yep.
But I've also said I was less of a man back then, and I couldn't handle your mother. I
Yep.
couldn't work out how
Yep.
to live with her, you know. So I let now I know I could. I don't want to, but I definitely could now. And in that, I'm showing him that the honesty, and I think that's the hardest thing we don't do as parents at times, is be really honest with our
We need
kids
to be honest.
at an age when they can take it,
Yes.
and say, mate, this is what happened, and this is where
Yeah, we
I
just need
felt
to
this.
own our part in
Yeah,
the thing,
yeah,
and not, you know, this is what happens a lot of the time, is not blame the other person for everything, because we played a part in it. No matter what happened, we played a
absolutely.
part. So I love that you're being honest, and I think kids need that. And honestly, my boys are only 4 and 6, but I can see that they're not going to put up with shit anyway. You
Yeah,
know,
good.
like if they just tell it as it is, and they ask me questions straight out already, and they're only 4 and 6. So, you know, kids are different these days. They're not going to put up with, you know, what maybe we put up with when we were kids, because we didn't know any better. So, you know, and you're leading the way for him. I just want to touch on one more thing before we finish up, Sean. And I
You're
think
right.
this
Yep.
is really important. It's like you said, you know, growing up, you were in a female dominated house, and that you essentially, you know, showed your emotions and in a way behaved the way your sisters behaved, because that's all you knew. And I think that, you know, that's something that, you know, whether it needs to be opened up for conversation for other people as well, because boys and girls are innately different.
Mm-hmm.
Yet when we're raising children, often we think we have to raise them exactly the same, but we don't, because they're innately different. And you can see that when you put boys and girls, you know, outside or with toys or whatever, they gravitate to different things most of the time. without any conditioning. We're innately different. And I've got two boys, and they've really tested me to allow them to be boys, and to especially one of them, to grow into a man. So I don't know if you have any more to say about that, but I just wanted to note that, because a lot of the time, particularly when women are single mums, and I'm a single mum at the moment, it's like, well, I want my boy to be nice. Yeah, I get that. I want my boys to be nice too, but I also want them to be a man. Like, to grow into be a man, and not to expect them to behave like a girl, or to behave like a woman as they grow up, the feminine traits to dominate them because I'm a woman. So I don't know if you have any more to say about that.
Well, I've with my boy, I've really over the years watched him become his mother, right? Even though so what I try to instill in him is, you're the head of the house as a male figure, right? Because your mum's, she's your parent.
Yep.
But you have to be this young man. You have to be able to do this. And the things this year, we found that he did not understand about respect. He didn't understand about boundaries. He was allowed a really long lead. I think as if for females, for mothers, need to really have set boundaries. There has to be that strong encasement for children, and especially boys, because boys will go. Boys will. Girls do too. I can tell you. I've been down that road with a stepdaughter, but that's another story altogether. But with my boy, what I've done with him, I've given him boundaries, but I love him to death, and he knows I love him. I hold him, I hug him, I show all that in a masculine way.
Yes.
And I'm not saying for mothers to do that, because you can't. You just have to be that nurturing, beautiful person for them.
Yes.
But there has to be, we have to have boundaries for our children.
Yeah.
And unless we don't, they will go looking for them, and because that's what they want. They're looking for these boundaries. Where are they?
They are.
And they just not there. But if you bring them into this container, this beautiful space where they just, okay, this is where I'm at, they're happy to play in that space. I can tell you, my boy's happier now than what he was 6 months ago.
Yeah, they definitely need it. They need their rules, their structure, and they need room within that, but they need some sort of guidance to follow.
And it's about knowing that they're cared for and they're loved.
Yes.
Because when they're let go to have no boundaries, that to me shows a lack of, not a lack of love, but a lack of the boys seeing they are loved.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you can just do whatever you like.
Yeah.
That's just, it's like some sheep in the paddock that just run off and don't care because no one's worrying about them. But if you set the boundaries and they know then that they're loved, like I talk to him about his basketball every night after a game or whatever.
Yep.
And you did some great stuff, mate, ordinary stuff. And we talk about it. And at the end, I'm so proud of you. So I just reinforce where I'm at with him, but I also, and it's in life, it's we got all this you've got to do, mate. But throughout it all, I'm just going to love you anyway.
I love that.
And I think that is one thing that I had from my mum. My mum showed me that love.
Yep.
But not in the way that
it's always going to be different from mother and father, and it should be. And I think that's why there's I guess in society it's a bit tricky at the moment, because there is a lot of separated families, and a lot of from what I understand, a lot of fathers who don't get to see their children. So so it is a bit tricky, but I just wanted to open that up for anyone who listens and maybe wants to dive a little more into that on their own journey. So
can I just tip into that just a little bit before we go?
Yeah.
Is when I made a conscious decision as well when we separated, that I knew I was losing time with my son. I knew that.
Yeah.
But what I did was one thing I did was say that I cannot worry about what's happening now. Everything I'm doing now, it's like anything, you're building for the future. So one thing I could say to fathers, say, or whoever isn't the primary carer, is do not get caught up in not having time with the child now, at that now point, because we can do and say some stupid things which can have horrendous ramifications down the track, where I just kept looking further down the road, you know, and now I'm reaping those benefits. I'm not getting to spend much more time with my boy, but our connection is really strong.
Good.
And our love is fantastic. You know, to have a 14-year-old boy tell him he loves you in front of his mates is, I'm pretty
that's pretty
chuffed
good
about that.
That's pretty good. But I do know a lot of men stay in relationships because of the fear that they will not get to see.
I wouldn't do that.
You know, that they won't get to see their children again. And you know, I mean, I'm not a man, so I don't know that feeling, but you know, that must be terrible to have to stay in a relationship because there's fear that you won't see your children again. So
yeah, I must say that did come into play early on because we weren't together very long, unfortunately. And my boy was 15 months old when we separated. So he's never known us to be together. He's known this split. I think, the older the children are, the harder it would be. But I'm just saying, I never did. I just stayed really strong in behaving myself, so to speak, you know, and regardless of what was being said to me in that, I just stayed firm, because I was never going to win that fight that day or the next day or whatever. It's all about having a vision that down the road,
long term,
things are going to. It's that long term goal that I set, and now, like I say, I've stuck there, went through whatever, become a better person for it.
So you keep showing up for him and for your relationship.
Absolutely. And that's all I can, if that's a bit of advice for single, or, you know, men that have broken up.
I get it.
You can't, we do get caught up in the now, and the disappointment and the loss and everything. And I get that. But every time you interact, to me, it was always about what is this going to do for me down the track? If it's going to be a really bad interaction, like, you know, yelling, screaming, carrying on, well, that's gonna hurt. And so, and plus, why would I want my son to see me in that situation?
Exactly.
Or be like that? Because why would I wouldn't want that, because I don't want him to be like that.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Sean.
No,
we will finish up now. So thank you for sharing your story. There's been golden nuggets of information and little drops of wisdom. So I love that. Thank you. I'll hit stop, but thank you for sharing, and I'll have a chat to you in a moment. Thanks, Sean.
no worries.